infrastructure projects throughout his career. His focus has been to enhance business processes by leveraging the best-of-breed solutions that he can find and then optimizing them for any unique business requirements that his business has. Phil has a bachelor's degree in computer science from Boston College and a master's in computer science from Boston University. And as part of the MACOM leadership team, he's been there for the last 3 or 4 years. The company just went public in March 15th of this year. Also speaking is GoEngineer's Greg Katai. So Greg Katai has been in the PLM space for over 15 years, where he started when Agile was a startup company as one of the original employees. He started the Rocky Mountain region for Agile prior to its being acquired by Oracle, and has been personally involved with over 400 different Agile PLM projects. And what Greg has done in the last 8 years at GoEngineer as a founding principal was to take the leadership that he's had and the experience and continue to put that together to get people implement systems quicker and faster. So with that, I'm going to kick off the presentation to Greg, and just a little bit on housekeeping. There is no speaking at the end of this, so for any kind of questions or comments, please send it through the chat, and at the end, at the Q&A period, I'll read them off, and either Greg and or Phil will answer them. With that, Greg, I hand it over to you.
Thanks, Eric. So I'm going to walk through some information here on the topic of whether or not PLM is actually cost-effective and fast to implement. So that's the topic for today. Let me go through the actual topic list for you. Okay. Again, we're a little bit new to this, so if anybody is able to hear us, if you could send us a quick chat just to let us know that you're hearing this, that would give us a little extra confidence. Okay, so topics for today, PLM. What is it and why have it? This will be a very brief overview of what PLM is all about, because that's really not the main focus of today's presentation. Then we'll get into the challenges of what the typical implementation approach, and then we'll talk about the way we go about this, which is a better way to do it, particularly if you're trying to make things more affordable and get things done faster. We'll tell you a little bit about who GoEngineer is if you're not familiar with us, go into a deeper dive into the approach that we take, and then lastly we'll turn this over to Phil Stathas at MACOM, and he'll describe the project that they did a while back and tell you what the expectations were, what the results were, how that project went. And finally, we'll open it up to questions, which you'll be able to submit via the application through the GoToMeeting webinar. So you can send in your questions anywhere along the way here, and then we can go through those and answer those at the end. Okay, so what is PLM? This is a somewhat wordy definition, but some of you may have seen this before, but let me just walk you through this quickly. It's PLM enables companies to accelerate product innovation, maximize profitability of products by managing the information, processes, and decisions about those products throughout the life cycle, collaboratively and across the network. So again, if you read that, the underlined words are kind of the key things. It's about helping companies innovate, improve profitability, manage all the information and procedures around this data, and ultimately collaborate with that with your supply chain internally as well as with your suppliers. So typically what we see out there is what we like to call the spaghetti slide. So what you have is suppliers, internal people in production, procurement, your different R&D sites, marketing, customers. You have all these people trying to work together and ultimately design and produce a product. And there is quite a bit of complexity in getting all this information to move through the organization. And as you can see from all these interconnected lines, There's a lot of connections, and obviously there'd be a lot of systems and processes that underlie all this. In many companies today, this is very disparate data, the processes are disjointed, and there's many systems, and ultimately makes it very difficult to execute, and it causes profit leaks in the business. So you don't get out as much as you thought you were going to get going in out of a product line that you're trying to develop and launch. So this is a slide that if you take a minute to read through this, what you will see is probably some familiar quotes that you might have even heard inside your own company. So it's funny that this slide was written over 10 years ago and it's still relevant today. So people complaining that can't find the data that they need. They don't trust that they have the latest version. Manufacturing might be building, or the supplier, even worse, might be building to an outdated revision. Your manufacturing organization or suppliers may not know that changes are coming. This is one of my favorites. I can't find it, so I just recreate it. You hear that in engineering. We have a process, but nobody follows it. So you can read this, but I'm guessing that most people have experienced some or maybe all of these within the business, and obviously product lifecycle management systems really alleviate this. So if you want to, so we're going to be talking about the Agile product to some degree today. That's the product that we work with, so Agile PLM, and we're going to talk about how the implementations work. But I wanted to give you a picture of where this thing fits within the organization. So first off, the concept is to get rid of all that spaghetti from the previous slide and try to centralize all that into something that we call the product record. So it's the complete record of the product. Everything that describes that, so you can design it, build it, manage it, buy it, and ultimately obsolete it. So, you have your engineering operations that's kind of in the upper left of the screen. So you have software, your mechanical and electrical, and your documents. That all flows into Agile, so it's building out that product record. And then from there, you can transact this information. You can send build packages out to a supplier. You can send engineering changes out. You can get change requests back. You can send vendor information back and forth. And ultimately, you can populate your ERP system. Could be Oracle, J.D. Edwards, SAP, Microsoft Dynamics, any of those, and many, many more. And you publish out to that system through your release process, your engineering change orders, bills of material, parts, which are known as items, the AVL, et cetera. So Agile becomes this collaboration hub between your various organizations and your supply chain, and it communicates out to your own ERP system for the functions that it performs. Ultimately, it centralizes all this data, so parts bombs, vendor information, documents, drawings, CAD files, and it handles the workflows. So obviously that goes a long way to alleviating the spaghetti slide that we saw earlier, and ultimately help you to execute and launch products. So if we take a look at, from the dollar perspective, what this might mean to a business, it's not uncommon with these products to get payback in less than 12 months. And we've seen as fast as 6-7 months for smaller companies, typically larger companies, bigger projects. It can be, it can be comfortably in the 12-month period or less. There's a framework to measure this, and so ultimately, if you look at your revenues on the kind of the top line and expenses on the bottom line, and then take a look at how these systems actually improve the various aspects of the business, you can see that, and these are actually measured results. You can accelerate new product introduction cycle time by 20 to 30%. That's not uncommon. Reducing purchasing costs, material costs can come down 5 to 15%. That's very big and hard dollars. Labor. Certain people can see, enormous reduction in the labor it takes to do something. So you can see certain cycle times with dramatic improvements. ECO cycle times getting dramatically reduced. A lot of times ECOs are eliminated because you don't have to do as many corrections. And ultimately scrap, rework, excess and obsolete inventory all sees benefit. This adds up to a lot, and it's not the purpose of the call today to quantify that, but suffice it to say there's a significant value proposition behind this when you go down the PLM path. Okay, so that's it on PLM. Hopefully that gives you a taste, if you're not familiar with it, of what it can do. Now let's tell you a little bit about us, GoEngineer. So we started the PLM business unit in 2004, so we've been at this for over 8 years. The company is actually over 25 years old. We have over 375 customers so far, that we've accumulated during that period of time. All of our consultants are senior level, so no newbies out there on our team. They've performed collectively over 600 implementations. So some of these people have worked other places and so have experience that goes beyond GoEngineer. But if you aggregate all that, our people, which is ultimately what's I think really critical here, is an enormous amount of experience, and they have combined over 150 years of experience with PLM business processes and also with the Agile product. The industries that we spend our time in primarily are high tech, the medical and life science, industrial companies. Alternative energy has been a big one, and more recently we're getting into the consumer products area. I guess I should also add the aerospace and defense. We've done a reasonable amount of work there as well. We are certified by Oracle, and we're certified in 2 ways. We're certified as an Accelerate specialist, which means rapid implementations. Oracle's taken us through that whole evaluation and certification process. And we're also certified as a specialized partner around the PLM technologies. And then we're part of GoEngineer. So GoEngineer, as I said, has been around for quite a while. It's actually the largest reseller of SolidWorks in North America. We have over 10,000 customers on that side of the business, over 150 employees in the entire company. And we are growing fairly rapidly. We're currently around $50 million in annual revenue, but we're growing by acquiring other businesses as well as through significant organic growth. Why did we start the business? What are the founding principles? And I think this is important because it really gets to why we're in the business we're in. Deep business experience. We want to bring deep experience to deliver a better project. So in support of that, people that we've hired have either been customers who are users of PLM software or Agile employees where they had lots of technical experience. And in many cases, our people were both. They started as a customer, were hired into Agile or Oracle, and then came to us. Those people must have best practice knowledge. So we look for very well-rounded people that have been in the business, held middle to upper level positions in companies in their career, and have experience in the different industries. And then ultimately, they must understand the tools that feed PLM. If you go back to the earlier slide where you have the CAD tools are feeding in data, the PLM system feeds out data to supply chain, to ERP. So understanding these tools is very important to designing an appropriate process. So business experience, critical. Second thing is to innovate, to try to do this really a different way. So do some innovation to drive down the cost and time it takes to do an implementation. So the first thing we do is a deliverables-based model. We'll talk about that more later. Second thing is to use tools, build out and develop tools that streamline the implementation process. Next thing is to be practical, not pie in the sky. Really focus in the project, minimize scope creep. And then lastly, leverage your people, your experience, wherever we can. Save some money and some time. And ultimately, we want to then turn this into an overall package that gives you a predictable outcome at a fixed price so that it isn't just a blank check and a very low risk to no risk type of project. So that's why we exist. This is what we think about every day, and this is from the beginning through still today. So if you look at the typical implementation approach that we see out there, so this is what we are not doing. This is what we're trying to change. First thing you'll see is it's not uncommon for a project to take 6 to 9 months. So I've just taken a 7-month look. And the first thing that happens is in a project you have to train the core team, you do the installation, and you have to define the project. And it's often that takes well over a month just to get that all going because you have a wait period. First thing you have to do is wait for your hardware and your servers before you can do anything. and wait for classes to become available from the vendor. So there's quite a bit of delay just starting. Now you've already spent the money on the software, so now the clock's ticking. So next you do business process workshops. They take a considerable amount of effort. It might take a couple of weeks or more to do that, followed by a few weeks of application configuration and starting your data migration. Then you get into your conference room pilot, and you might somewhere during that phase in parallel start the ERP integration. You do your successive data migrations and your additional conference room pilot. Then you get into CRP3. It's very often that we see 3 CRPs in these projects because there's a lot of testing, a lot of work to do, and finally a UAT, a user acceptance testing. Then you get your end user training courses built. You train your end users. You do your final migration, and you go live. Not uncommon at all for that to take easily 6, 7, 8 months to do that. Ultimately, what we don't like about this approach and why we're doing something different here is you have a delayed start, and so that's costing you money because in theory, you're buying the system to get a benefit. That benefit accrues every month, and every month you wait could cost you $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, depending on how big the problem is. Could be $1 million worth of benefits that you're not getting because the system's not live. So there is a cost to delay. The second is the workshops and the configuration activities take a long time. You might be looking at 3 months before you're really ready to do serious conference room pilots. And then it's entirely possible you're going to need 3 CRPs. And then it takes a considerable amount of time to build out end user training material, as any of you would know if you built that kind of material. That can take a couple of weeks easily. And ultimately, what this boils down to is higher costs for labor, for travel expense, and the delayed business benefits. So, the purpose of this entire webinar today is to really discuss how these systems can be put in in a more effective way so that if you've been holding off or waiting because you're just scared of this process or you think it's just too costly, we think we have a better answer for you. So what's the core of our methodology? Number one is take smart, experienced people, give them a fantastic tool set, and that's our IP. Use a deliverables-based methodology where we're billing you for what's accomplished, not for hours that we're working. And ultimately, we call that the Jumpstart methodology. So we'll get into a little bit more detail of this. So the Jumpstart methodology starts with a pre-configured baseline for Agile. That can be industry-specific or can be more of a generic baseline that takes care of things like roles and privileges for users. Certain fields that are just obvious that you might need in a system, like, for example, a make-buy code that you might put on a part. So things that don't come out of the box, pre-configured, we've taken the time to do that for you based on our years of experience doing projects for different types of companies. The next piece is it's very easily modified to fit the customer requirements. So this thing, the baseline configuration, you can add, delete as much as you want in order to have it fit your business. But this is, generally speaking, a very good and a better place to start than what comes off of the CD. Then we have additional tools that save time and money. We'll talk about that. Things like training packages and other things. And ultimately, this allows us to spend more of our time and your valuable dollars spending time in the really core value areas, which are business process design, getting your data loaded, and training users. We'll also leverage your people. So if you've got project managers internally, you've got good experience where you can help us manage this, then we'll offset your expense by backing down on our needs there and having you fill in those gaps. And then one of our ultimate goals here is creating self-sufficiency for you as early in the project as we possibly can. So what we're trying to do is do a knowledge transfer throughout the project so that when you go live on that fateful first day, that nobody is a deer in the headlights. It's a comfortable, kind of a non-event, and we pride ourselves in these projects being non-events when you go live. And then on the deliverables-based piece, what we're doing there is we lay out a series of services that we provide, and then we bill you for those as they complete. So you can check them off the quote, see as things are being, see as each activity is being accomplished, and you pay for that when it's done. So ultimately, this whole jumpstart, the configuration we start with, as well as this process, it's a better way to go, and it's a better starting point than what we see with the more traditional approach. Lastly, I'll point out that we're certified by Oracle with this model, and this has been, we've been doing this since day one, really, for years and years. But Oracle certified us a few years ago, and we're very excited to see what we were doing. A little more detail on the jumpstarts themselves. This is an industry map. So we've got 3 of them shown here. And a jumpstart configuration includes part numbering as a baseline, the life cycle phases, the categorization of parts and documents, role and privilege models for users, workflows, and then dashboards to help you track what's going on. I won't go into exhaustive detail here, but the key points are that in high tech, there's a lot of part types in high tech companies, a lot of caps, resistors, diodes, nuts, bolts, screws to track and capture the information about. And so on the high tech configuration, it emphasizes granular management of parts. In the medical or life science area, there's a lot of documentation. In relative terms, the documentation is more important to track at a granular level than the parts. At least that's been our experience. And so we emphasize categorization of documents over the part types. And we also, of course, build in the quality processes since those are so important to medical companies. And then semiconductor is really an extension of high tech, but it includes the manufacturing process steps for the semiconductor devices. And so kind of extends on high tech. All right, so that gives you kind of a summary of this. And we're happy to share more detail with you if you want, if you contact us directly about this. Now, some of the processes that are pre-configured in here. So in other words, pre-configured workflows, kind of the flow charts are already predefined. Of course, they can be modified, but we have so much experience with this that we find that we can deliver to you a pretty good starting point without having to make lots and lots of changes. Again, saving time, saving money. So for the product collaboration module for Agile, that gets into the overall process of new product introduction. It, of course, includes the layouts for change requests, change orders, deviations and stop ships. We also handle the sourcing aspect with sourcing changes known as an AML. Well, tracking the AML and then driving the AML changes. The whole bill of material management structure. Collaboration with suppliers as well as customers. So you can see the rest of this. In the quality area, particularly important for medical, would be things like corrective actions, the CAPAs, the complaints, non-conformances, et cetera. So those are just samples. For other modules, we've got the additional processes, and so there's quite a bit there behind it. So I'm going to explain a little bit of how our methodology works. Please ignore the CRP. That'll be appropriate in the right spot. So the first thing that happens here is, so we look at this, we think we can shrink these. In fact, we have shrunk them from in that 6 to 7 month range down into a 3-month type of project. And that's for a more complex project. And for smaller projects, it can happen anywhere from 30 to 60 days. But the first thing that happens is we do the project definition. You have the installation, hosting, and training. So hosting is an interesting thing we can talk about for a second. Well, we offer and are actually kind of approved by Oracle at a national level to host Agile. We've got well over 2,000 users now hosted, and that becomes a very nice alternative to installation because it turns on in 1 day. And so the whole issue of waiting for hardware and getting that all installed goes away. We flip the switch, you're turned on, you're ready to go. So, but we can still install very quickly as well, it's just that you have the delay for hardware. So first thing that happens is we have taken these boxes that you see on the screen, particularly the installation and the training, and we have our tools that help with that. Hosting helps with install to speed that up. And then for the training classes, we've pre-developed all of these courses for each module for both super user level, which is all the button clicks, and the administrator course, which teaches you how to open up the hood and tinker with the engine. And so we've got those classes. We bring them to you. We have no delays. and we have laptops that are set up with all of this course material on there, so we can fly in, don't have to wait for hardware, and immediately get started. So the first thing is that first month of delay on the traditional approach shrinks to nothing. I mean, we can generally start in a matter of days after getting the purchase order. So the next piece of different from the original approach, or the typical approach, is that you get into the process definition workshops and the configuration of the application. Well, with the Jumpstart baseline or template, as you might think of it, those boxes compress. So whereas before we might have been completing configuration by month 3, here a little bit after the beginning of month 1, we're ready to go with CRP. So then we get into the CRP box, and in parallel with that, we get the data migration going. And once again, you'll see down at the bottom that we have data load tools that we've built. We have years of code libraries that help us to migrate data. So chances are you're not going to hit us with something we haven't seen before in terms of a data structure. So we leverage all of that. And then we have the conference room pilot support, which we can do remotely because generally the CRPs are smaller and simpler due to the fact we're working with a configuration that you've already had a chance to see and absorb, and in general, we're finding customers like it. So CRP gets shorter. UAT, these activities can be supported remotely, which saves travel expense as well as time, and we've got tools to speed up the migration. When we get into the integration to an ERP, assuming that you have one, then we've got tools that support that. We have our own utilities that help with getting data out to different kinds of systems, and then we have a whole range of off-the-shelf integrations that we represent from other companies that we can bolt together to make this go very, very smoothly. So what is frequently viewed as a risk point is actually something that can work very, very well. And then ultimately on development of training material, we've got training packages already built. It's designed to be modified by you for train-the-trainer activities. So what would normally take 2 weeks, 3 weeks of work shrinks down normally to just a few, might be as little as a couple of days of customization before training the end users. Then lastly, you get into the final data migration that you do, and then you go live. And then once you go live, then you get into the phase where you might start finding over the next few months opportunities to improve, tweak, modify, enhance the productivity. So we have a whole range of tools. We call them Go tools. I think we've built over 30 to date of utilities and small applications that just help customers to optimize their system and streamline the usage for the users. So this is how this works. So again, smart people with a great tool set and a good methodology to build each one of these boxes builds as it completes is ultimately what we're doing, and that delivers some fantastic results. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Phil Stathas from MACOM, and he'll give you his experience as a real customer of this approach. Phil?
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. Greg, I take it I have control over the mouse here?
You do now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me speak here. As Eric had alluded to, the last couple of years, actually almost 3 years, I've been with MACOM Technology Solutions. Actually, I am a returning veteran. I had been with MACOM Technology for 12 years, moved on to another operation where actually Agile was in use, and that's where I learned a lot about Agile. But now with MACOM Technology again, and a quite different company. I'm going to go through a few slides that are marketing based. I am by no means a marketing expert, so bear with me as I just talk about the company. Very proud about the company. It's been a 60-year history, and we have quite a few products to talk about it. Greg, could you check? I'm not able to move through the slides.
Okay.
Or if anything, if you could advance the slide for me, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
So just a quick introduction to MACOM Tech. Thank you. We are a semiconductor operation. We manufacture products that serve the that are in the RF microwave millimeter wave space, so we'll talk about the broad spectrum that we service. We have over 3,000 products and many, many different markets that we serve. Again, we talked about the 60-year history. Some of our competitors include companies like Avago, RFMD, and Triquint. They too, some of them are Agile users, Agile customers. Chances are that your cell phone has one of our chips. We have a strong relationship with the automotive industry, namely Ford, Volvo, and Mercedes. We manufacture products such as the collision avoidance detection radar systems that go on the front end of a Mercedes S-Class vehicle. We also have onboard computer and GPS solutions that are used for tracking fleets of vehicles, software that we develop in part of our RF space. Again, 60 years young, but we're now a public company, and as a result, we're a different company.
Phil, try the page down, see if that works. Otherwise, I'll do it for you.
Just did, and not moving. So if you wouldn't mind, next slide. Thank you. We started out as a company in 1950 called Microwave Associates. The company actually was renamed in 1978 as MACOM, which really is Microwave Associates Communications Incorporated. We've had many parents, from AMP, looking for a wireless technology, to Tyco, just acquiring AMP in '95, to Cobham Defense, who sold us off in 2009 to private investors, namely the Ocampos. In 2010, the Summit Partners made a significant investment in MACOM, and now here we are in 2012. We're a public company trading on NASDAQ. Next slide, please. We have a global presence. Our presence is really made up of our sales, our design centers, and our fabrication facility. Our headquarters is in Lowell, Massachusetts. The design centers that we have are in Santa Clara, California, Torrance, California, Cork, Ireland, Lowell, Massachusetts, and Sydney, Australia. The relationships with subcons in Asia are very strong, and we continue to look at other sites for acquisitions or partnerships with other manufacturing entities. For example, we are partnering now with Win Semiconductor to manufacture some of our products as well. Next slide, please. We have a broad portfolio of products. You can see them. We are servicing the ITAR, which is the U.S. government. We have a U.S. Commerce, unrestricted, and an international government business. The spectrum of products that we manufacture go from 1 megahertz to 110 gigahertz. These are just the 3 market segments that we play in, but we're servicing in excess of 5,000 customers, including our distribution channels. We do quite a lot of business with our distribution group, but we do have feet on the street, and those feet on the street are actually also very interested in some of the projects that are underway today. We'll talk about that briefly. So next slide, just a summary of the company, just an executive summary. Again, 60 years delivering world-class solutions. We have an unparalleled breadth and depth of products, strong technical organization, decades of proven solutions and market leadership, and we're highly recognized in the RF microwave and millimeter space. Just catching up to some slides here. If we could move to the problem statement slide. There we go. So some time ago, our new VP of Engineering came into place, and he was tasked with developing 150 new products within a 2-year time frame. This was an ominous task, especially when some designs are actually in the past take well over 12 months, well over a year. So our task was to identify what the bottlenecks were and find some quick solutions. So what were the problems? Well, we saw some of these in Greg's presentation earlier. We couldn't get answers. We had opportunity assessments, but we couldn't investigate if it was a right investment to make or not. Did it Did it offer sustainable growth? Was it a product that we wanted to invest in? Was it a customer we wanted to deal with? Our new product development. We couldn't figure out what was going on within our design center in Cork, Ireland versus what was going on in Lowell. Constant video conferences or traveling back and forth were the only way to be able to address updated status. Change management, we couldn't determine if our supply chain was using the latest rev of our product, and we really didn't know if some of the investments that we were making were a smart business financial decision. So what were the new product development revenue and margin forecasts? We lacked a centralized PLM tool and for our cross-functional collaboration. We were always just blocking and tackling to be able to manage our business. The problem was further exacerbated by the fact that we had global operations and we were still acquiring companies. We had, since I've been back here, we've acquired two companies, and we had to integrate them into our ERP system as well as into all other business systems. We needed a fully integrated PLM solution and was critical so that we can manage and track the health of our business. And we needed to do this quickly, faster time to market, drive sustainable growth and profitability. Again, we needed to do this with 150 new designs within a 2-year time frame. So what we did was, next slide please, Greg. We performed an assessment of all the tools that are currently servicing our business systems. So we really have a PLM environment that's made up of a mixture of tools, namely Microsoft Project and Matrix, which was our legacy PDM, Product Data Management Solution, or Product Documentation Management Solution. Our ERP system and our MES system, our Manufacturing Execution System, are SAP and ILIT, and then we were still leveraging a bunch of different CRM solutions, which included Excel, email, and a product called Neonet. We looked at what our greatest opportunity was to reduce the applications and said that, let's focus our efforts within the PLM area. As you can see, there were many applications involved in the PLM process, and Matrix was just only one of the ones that had the greatest focus and effort on. Next slide, please. So the end state objective was to have a PLM tool globally, and that tool would be Agile. We looked at SAP and other products, but the past experience that I had with Agile and the experience that our business leaders had with Agile drove the final decision. Next slide. So the modules that we chose to invest in were specific. We wanted to, and the implementation was phased. So we invested in the Product Portfolio Management Application, PPM, the Product Collaboration Module, PC, Enterprise Visualization, which really was the ability for us to view our drawings and our documents, the Product Costing Management Module, and the Business Intelligence Module. At the end of the day, we wanted to be able to do cross-correlation between all four of these, data silos, so that we can do some analysis. What's not shown here is also the integration to an ERP system, and our ERP system again was SAP. Next slide, Greg. So what was our implementation approach? Well, we've sought out to select an implementation partner based on experience and past implementation successes. In the end, while we interviewed a few companies, GoEngineer showed the greatest level of skills, and we chose them as our preferred partner. Our environment is our infrastructure is very simple. We don't have many data centers, and so we needed to consider how we could actually have this environment up and running quickly. So we chose GoEngineer to actually host the hardware and software, and this allowed us maximum uptime to reduce support costs, and it also provided us another benefit. Because we are an international business, our ITAR products could not be visible by the international sites. Likewise, the international business, their equivalent of ITAR, could not be seen by the U.S. The moment that happened, it could fall under ITAR control. So we worked with GoEngineer and established two different silos of two repositories, if you will, a US-based repository, and there are servers internal to our operation in Cork, Ireland, that we're using to manage our IGB business, our international government business. So we wanted to leverage a quick start template solution. We wanted then to optimize the environment once it was stable. We knew that we needed something quick and dirty to get in, if you will, but as time went on, we would focus our attention to enhance that after we were live. So we are live with, right now, the product portfolio management, product collaboration, and PQM. And I just want to talk about the phased deployment. We set out to do this in logical chunks. We wanted the PPM, product collaboration, and ERP migration, ERP integration to take place as one phase. And that actually was scheduled, working with GoEngineer, as a 4-month effort. Now, I have to be honest with you and tell you that I had some doubts that it could actually be achieved in a 4-month time frame. And actually, we achieved this in 5 months. And it wasn't because of a GoEngineer or a technical issue. We actually had, it was a financial cycle that we wanted to hold off. We had, it was a holiday season. We had some resource constraints. So in the end, we went live on 5/15/2011. Very successful implementation of the PPM, PC, ERP integration, and also the enterprise visualization. So we allowed that environment to settle, performed ongoing training, continued training, and then we tackled the PQM project. This was a product quality management module that actually replaced 5 disconnected systems, whether they be Access databases, Excel spreadsheets, websites that were homegrown. They were identified, and all of the data was extracted from the systems and migrated to PQM. This was proposed as a 1-month initiative by GoEngineer. Again, I had my doubts, but true to form, we actually were able to do this in just under 2 months. And again, this wasn't an issue with GoEngineer, it was an issue with our business being ready to actually move forward. It was another financial issue, it was another resource constraint issue. But it's impressive to say that in literally 7 months' time, we implemented 4 modules, excuse me. Our next phase is going to be the business intelligence module, and then following that will be PCM, the product costing management module. One might ask, why aren't you moving forward with PCM? We have enough girth of data right now that we really want to be able to do some analysis between the PPM, PC, and PQM components. So we're going to focus on BI as the next implementation. And that's been planned for a 2-month implementation. We actually have been playing around the tool. I feel confident we can actually get it done within the 2-month time frame. So now just to look at what does Agile look like for MACOM Technology Solutions. Next slide, please. When we began the design, we introduced what we called an opportunity assessment phase. The OA phase here, this is the first gate in the process. Management can determine how opportunities, with all the new opportunities with customers, they can quickly approve or shoot down a project, so we're not spending any time on low margin business. We can see the potential revenue, and we can approve OAs across the entire landscape. Anybody within the entire company can submit an OA. It gets reviewed, approved, and if it gets approved, it moves into the next logical state, which is a project. Next slide, please. So one of these OAs became a project, and that project in this case is known as the MAFL 010112. You can see that part number, actually project number as well. A little bit about this detail. On the left-hand side, you can see the navigation pane. This is the logical steps. These are the sequence of events that the engineering community must go through in the life cycle of this product. You can see up in the upper right-hand corner the status, the health status of the project, all is well. And in the body of the email, it provides a significant amount of information such as discussions, such as any news that has been identified, the current state of the project gates, and you can actually embed graphics that help one understand what the image is going to look like. Now you can imagine that a salesperson on the road is looking to get some information about a project, a customer they're visiting who's recommended the design of a new product. He can log on or she can log on to Agile remotely, and there's no need for a VPN. It's a secure connection out on the internet. They're able to look firsthand to see what the status is of that project, and then speak to the customer firsthand when they're visiting on site. Next slide, please. So this MAFL product actually has a product collaboration piece to it. Its entire bill of materials is listed as you can see here. That bill of material is actually pushed into SAP. So using a connector that GoEngineer had provided with the implementation product called SCMNet, now owned by Hitachi, we're feeding a significant amount of information into SAP, whereas before this was a manual exercise. People had to recreate the bill of materials in SAP, add a significant amount of information in the material master. We no longer have to do that. It's now automatically done through SCMNet. Next slide, please. Just some stats on our Phase 1 Go Live, and I'll also include some Phase 2 Go Live activities. We have 129 new opportunities that were added, that were approved and moved on. We have 307 projects approved and underway. 1,989 new parts and drawings were entered into Agile. That makes up a total of 227,000 parts and drawings across 52 subclasses. We have 2,512 engineering change orders processed in Agile, of which 2,306 are closed. So ECO process is hot and heavy within the Agile environment. And we have 456 active users. Just a side note, I talked about the PQM module going live recently. So we have 6,592 quality issues, or PCNs, part of change notices, in Agile. Many of them closed, but we transferred all the information from our legacy systems, of which 100 were added since Go Live as of 3/9/2012. So the statistics far exceed our original expectations. It's a testament to the ease of use for Agile. These statistics have allowed us to understand where the bottlenecks are in the process and where to apply additional training if necessary. These have also helped justify additional resources in our quality team, as well as the documentation control group, to avoid any backlogs in the process. We now have immediate visibility to project status and project discussions. This helps keep the projects on track. Our sales team, as I mentioned, have immediate information to projects and can speak to our customers real time. And we have global visibility for all of the business. This was one of the major issues, if you recall, back in the problem statements. Next slide, please. Some of the lessons learned in our implementation. Spent a fair amount of time understanding all the system interdependencies. It's difficult to address this midway into the project. We actually learned into the process, as you can imagine, a big company, many systems, that there was a dependency on this web-based solution that was being used by our suppliers. We had to find a solution to accommodate the business process, and we did so, but it derailed us slightly in the project. Allocate sufficient time for training and adoption of the PPM and PC solution. These are probably the largest tools, large modules that one will implement. You've got to make these training materials available, ensure that they're current. We have made changes since we went live with the Jumpstart tool, but we've had to update our training materials to accommodate the changes. Ensure your organization has identified sufficient internal and experienced resources. Truth be told, we went live with one person and just hired the second person. So there are only 2 people supporting Agile across our entire company. A $300 million business with 700 employees and, as you can see, 400 plus user accounts. It's working well. We do depend on GoEngineer for support as needed, but it's been a great relationship. And spend the time up front to map or load the metadata. These are called Agile Page 3 attributes. What the mistake we made was we brought over all of our PDM data, our product documentation management data, but there were no attributes or metadata about the products. So when we brought them over, you try to do a search on a resistor, and you have only the description. You'd like to do a search on resistance or perhaps supplier. We're now going back in for all those legacy parts and updating page 3 attributes. All new parts that have been created since Agile went live have all those page 3 attributes updated. So next slide, what's next? We're going to go back into Agile and update those page 3 attributes I talked about. We're going to optimize our design to account for new business processes, introduce more automation, and these process extension solutions. If you attend any of the Agile conferences, you'll learn more about PX solutions. Complete the last 2 phases of our project, the PCM and VIPs, and leverage the tool for other business processes. Don't consider Agile as just an engineering tool. We took Agile and we've extended it for non-engineering purposes. For example, our advanced materials authorization. This is a process where a customer comes in and says, I'm going to give you that PO, but please start some material for me in advance. Well, we needed some workflow solution. Agile provided that capability for us. We have 81 new AMAs in process, and we can now track the life cycle of those AMAs. Capital expenditure requests. Today it's all by email. We can use Agile and leverage Agile for that. Our semiconductor fab relies on projects as well, but they're not engineering projects. Agile is, or the PPM tool, is a very strong project management tool. Leverage it, and we are. Integration with our web presence. So we're going to be working with our marketing team to take data sheets that are now stored in Agile and automatically update those on our website so that there's no manual intervention. So we made tremendous progress in a short period of time, and our user community keeps presenting new opportunities for us to leverage Agile. Just one last slide here, the future landscape of our environment. So as you can see, SAP is a core. There are a number of tools tied to it, the CRM, business planning, ILIT, that MES system. There's the core of Agile. That itself is a very important silo, as it is with SAP. It's feeding SAP, it's feeding our website, it's feeding our tablets with information, and it's going to be feeding a business intelligence suite that will be able to do some very strong analytical analysis. Excelsius Dashboard is an SAP product that we'll be using to actually do executive level dashboard information. And we'll be tying into Agile, SAP, ILIT data, as well as CRM data, so that our executives can actually have firsthand information about the strength of the business. So with that, I give it back to Greg, and I guess we've got a few minutes here for any questions.
All right, Phil, thank you very much. So just to summarize, so GoEngineer and Agile together, GoEngineer with our capabilities and Agile, the tool, delivers an out-of-the-box system, very easy to configure. I think it's interesting what Phil was saying about the AMA process. They configured that themselves, and I think they had that up and running in a matter of, what, a day or two, Phil?
That's correct.
So that's really a testament to the ease of use to deploy it for even processes it wasn't even intended to be used for. So easily configurable. It's a scalable app. So for those of you that don't know, we've worked with customers that have 10, 15, 20 people in the entire business and have this solution in place. Then we worked with companies all the way up into the billion-dollar range with thousands of users. So one app that scales with absolute world-class functionality. Secondly, we've got a proven, efficient, and cost-effective model. And in your specific situations, we can talk about what that means in terms of actual implementation expense. But suffice it to say, we typically find we're coming in, in the neighborhood of half of what other organizations are charging to implement. Absolutely fantastic resources. Every single person on the team is very senior, I think the average is over 10 years of experience. And then they're enabled with our tool set. And we spend a lot of R&D money to build out all those tools that I mentioned earlier on the slide where we kind of showed the timeline. And ultimately, got a track record of delivering, and that's really a track record for Agile as well as GoEngineer, delivering high value to clients. So ultimately, the punchline is you really can implement a world-class PLM quickly and cost-effectively. So if you've been thinking about it, but you've been worried about the expense or the time, then I think you need to talk to us. So with that, we'll open this up to questions. We've got a few questions coming in, so I'll read them off. We have a question about using Agile for software development. I'm going to, Phil, if you're using Agile in the software development area of your business?
Not as yet, although that's been a topic of discussion from our automotive group, who do a lot of development.
So for software, firmware, that sort of thing?
Exactly.
Okay. So I think the answer is yes. Phil's answer is actually fairly typical. We've worked with a lot of companies where they are doing hardware and software, and they will manage Agile to build out the bill of material structure, and what they'll do is attach or manage the executables, but they'll still have a source code control system out there for managing the builds of the software. If you want to get more information about how that might be set up or how this might work, then please contact us, and we can pull in one of our consultants that's actually gone in and set this up for companies. The next question I have is, how does Agile compare to Omnify? And I don't think this is the appropriate forum to do a comparison of different PLM tools. So if you'd like to get into a discussion with us about that, we're happy to do that. We have some experience with Omnify. We have customers that have used both. So we could certainly have you talk to them and understand the differences. So I'd rather not really talk about a competitive product on this call. I have a question. How does this interface with ERP systems such as PeopleSoft? Agile is, I'll answer that one. Agile is built as an ERP agnostic tool. So prior to Oracle acquiring Agile, Agile was working with everything. We personally, as GoEngineer, have integrated with over 20 different ERP systems. And so the mechanisms are pretty much the same. Agile has a tool set that comes bundled. One is called ChangeCast, that's the older technology. Another is called ACS, or the content server. And what it basically does is it spits out XML files triggered by the release of an engineering change order, and it sends that over to the ERP, and then there's an adapter on the other side that picks up that file, that XML file, parses it, and brings it into the ERP and executes the update functions to create new items, to create new bills of material, or to update those. So that's the mechanism. For each ERP, there's a specific integration, and there's a variety of architectures to make that work. There's middleware that's out there, or there's point-to-point connections. PeopleSoft has been integrated to, as has lots and lots of other ERPs, and there's many off the shelf that don't require any, or at least not much, customization. Sort of depends on your target system. So again, if you'd like more information about that, then please contact us. Another question here is the system modular? And the answer is yes. In fact, I think you saw in Phil's slide the modules. There's actually a couple more beyond what he has in his slide, but there's, I think, 7 modules now of the product. And you can, the core is product collaboration. That core is what manages your parts, BOMs, documents, and change processes, and handles the output to the ERP. So that's the foundation that everybody starts with, and then the other modules are layered on top. And so you can implement them individually. You can implement them together. We generally recommend putting in a core first, and then, just as Maycom did, the product collaboration plus 1 or 2 other very strategic modules, and then add the others as you go. I have a question about page 3 attributes, to explain what that is. So I'll explain that one. So a page 3 attribute in Agile, it represents a part with a series of tabs of information. It's almost like you have a 3-ring binder, and on the spine of that binder is the part number. And if you pull it off the shelf and open it up, you've got tabs of information. Page 1 is the cover page. Page 1 would have things like part number, description, life cycle, revision, release date, things like that. Page 2 is a series of attributes, so it's flex fields, if you will, that further describe that part. It might be like a make-buy code, would be a field on there, or it, could be an owner of that item. So page 2 fields describe the part beyond the initial page 1 fields, and then page 3 expands that even further, except that page 3 is specific to the type of part that you're looking at, whereas page 2 is common to all parts. So a make-buy code would be common, whereas if it's a resistor you're talking about, on page 3 would be the attributes that describe a resistor, like resistance, whereas the page 3 for a capacitor would show capacitance. And that way you're not choking up all your parts with attribute data that doesn't relate to that type of part. So page 3 is a part type specific attribute. Okay. Question about the slides will be available in email after the presentation. I would say I'm not sure how we're going to make this available. We may put it up on our website so you can replay. If you're interested in the slide deck, then please contact Eric Caldy directly, and I'll give you his email. It's ecaldy, K-A-L-D-Y, at GoEngineer.com, and he can take care of getting out the specific information to you. Once again, that's ecaldy, so E-K-A-L-D-Y at GoEngineer.com. What language is GoTools geared towards? Have you had any service modules or patches? Okay, so there's a whole bunch of technical questions about that here. So GoTools is, the tools that we have today are written for English. We have done a little bit of nationalization for China, working through a partner that we work with in China. But for the most part, they're written in English and would have to be translated to support another language. We've had very little patches or updates to the GoTools. They're written using the APIs. They're generally pretty small apps. We're not writing big apps here. They're single purpose, very specific, and very streamlined. Our guys that write these things have been writing this. They're all former Agile technical guys, have been writing these things for years, so they know how to navigate around the gotchas. So we've had very little to do to provide after-the-fact support on these, but we of course provide that support when it's necessary. Server latency issues is another question. I'm not sure specifically what you're talking about there, I guess as it relates to the tools. There are latency issues depending on the architecture and what you're trying to do. We've rewritten certain apps that were using the SDK, which can be slow in some cases. We've rewritten some of those to work much faster using a different technology. And so generally speaking, our customers have been quite happy with the performance of what we've delivered. Another question is about how attributes are updated from supplier websites. That's an interesting one. We have an integration to PartMiner, and I believe we've worked on, or I'm not sure if we've delivered it or not yet, an integration, I think it was to the IHS database, but at least to PartMiner, we can actually populate attribute data directly from their database through an integration that we built in partnership with them. So if you happen to use PartMiner, that's useful, but the architecture can be used to connect to other services as well. So I don't know if I'm answering your question completely, but that's certainly one of the answers. And again, get a hold of us if you'd like to discuss that in more detail. Okay, with that, I don't have any other questions. If there are any more, please send them in. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. We'll give it another few seconds. Eric, do you have anything in closing? Contact information?
No, thank you. I think you have already given me or my email out to everybody, and by all means, please send me a request, and we'll get the presentation off to you in PDF form. And thank you for attending and participating in this. Thank you especially to Phil Stathas for presenting the MACOM story. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for attending.